Welcome to day 12 of 31 Days of Pursuing Wisdom. Today, just kind of want to start out with verse 1 and then just kind of go through some things. First of all, let's break it down. Proverbs 12 is about the right to live for God. It's actually another contrast between the upright and the wicked. It begins to tell us. But you'll see from verse 1 to 12, it kind of tells us the right way to live for God. It's telling us what we're supposed to do and how to live right in right standing. And then verses 13 through 15 talks about wisdom. Let me see what I have. Wisdom means being teachable. It talks about being teachable. And it starts out with that as well. But then verses 16 through 28 is talking about learning to speak wisely. And so there's some things that we can learn in this because you can listen to the words of people's mouth, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, is what the word says. And you can listen to what people are saying and you can watch what they're doing. Because one of the scriptures in here today, it even says that in verse, where is it? In verse 14, it says, a man will be satisfied with good from the fruit of his words, and the deeds of a man's hands will return to him as a harvest. And so it's saying what comes out of your mouth is then it becomes an action, because this is the deal. The thoughts and intents, and we're going to talk about that. It's right here in the beginning. The thoughts and intents and purposes of a man's heart is what, let me see where that is, verse 5 and 6. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with verse 1 really quick. It says, whoever loves instruction and discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof and correction is stupid. Now that's the Amplified. And I thought, yeah, well, God doesn't make us stupid. He gives us intelligence. And whenever we choose to listen to correction and move forward in the things of God, again, in wisdom, we're not stupid. I mean, that's a choice. It is not, stupidity is a choice. And so, because God didn't make us stupid. Let me just read to you what it says in the Passion. It says, to learn the truth, you must long to be teachable, or you can despise correction and remain ignorant. Ignorance is one thing, but stupidity is something else. Sometimes we just don't know certain things, and that is ignorance. But literally the Hebrew word there, it really means stupid as a cow. If you look it up, that's what it means. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, so what do? They just eat and chew and eat and chew. And so that's not what we want to do. We want to write that word on our heart. We want to be teachable. We want to long to be teachable. Even the wisdom, this is what my footnote says. There are times even when a wise person needs correction, but they'll appreciate its value. See, if you're wise, you appreciate the value of correction. You long for it. You want it. You want to be teachable at all times because you're constantly learning. And so when you're no longer learning and teachable, then we might as well give it up, right? And so you keep going. It says, so that was the first verse. And the second is, a good man will obtain favor from the Lord, but he will condemn a man who devises evil. And it goes on down and it talks about, it gets to verse 4 and it talks about a virtuous woman. And let me just say to you, verses 1 through 5 gives us 8 classes of people. It literally says, it talks about, if you look in the King James, you'll see these exact words that I wrote down here. It says, we'll see those who love and those who hate. We'll see a good man and a man of wicked devices. You'll see a virtuous woman, or one that is foolish or makes ashamed her husband, the righteous and the wicked. And so you see 8 different types or classes of people, and it tells you this will happen to this one, and this will happen to that one. And so we want to take into consideration all those different things and find ourselves in the right category. But I want to read to you, I love this portion of scripture where it says in verse 4, a virtuous and excellent wife worthy of honor is the crown of her husband, but she who shames him with her foolishness is like rottenness in his bones. And I know y'all have heard this scripture before, but I want to tell you what the word virtuous means. let me just read it out of the Passion. It says, the integrity and strength of a virtuous wife transforms her husband into an honored king. But the wife who disgraces her husband weakens the strength of his identity. Now, when you look up the word virtuous, because I've studied this out in Proverbs 31 before, and I've talked about all through so much of this, how it is, how there's a simile that goes here between the bride of Christ, or the wife, the bride of Christ, and or the false church and the true church, the harlot and then the true bride. And so I want to tell you what virtuous means, and it's talking about a virtuous wife. I'm going to give you the word for virtuous. It means kael in the Hebrew, and it means a force, an army, wealth, virtue, valor, strength, band of soldiers, or a company of great forces. And there's a whole bunch more that it means. And so I'm only just going to give you that part right now. And so we see where this has to be talking about us as a body of Christ, as the bride of Christ, not just as a wife to my husband. Yes, I don't want to be rottenness to his bones. I don't want to be his weakness, so to speak, is what that means. But there, I love the Passion because it says you'll transform your husband into an honored king. And if not, you'll weaken his identity. And that's what happens as the church, as the bride of Christ. That's what happens to us sometimes. We weaken the identity of who Jesus is in his strength, in his power, in his ability to rule and reign. Do you know what the word Proverbs means? It means to rule or to reign. Literally, it means it. Let me just find it real quick, and I will tell you what it means fully. The word Proverbs, when it talks about in the very beginning, the Proverbs of Solomon, the word Proverbs, it means to rule, to have dominion over. So it's a measurement. And so we need to rule. It means to reign. And so, or a superiority in mental action. So wisdom brings the ability to rule and reign in life, to rule and reign in this earth realm, in the king, so that we can advance the kingdom. And so that is part of what all these proverbs are all about, so that we can rule and reign in life. And so when we are fully the bride of Christ, that virtuous woman, that virtuous wife, we present him as an honored king, and we give him the identity, and we don't taint his identity. Does that make sense, so to speak? You know, Jesus came in power and in demonstration. He came to rule and reign, and then he left. He sent the Holy Spirit, and he said, now I'm going to give you a commission to go forth and do what I did. And so I need you to rule and reign as well. And so all of these things, all these wisdom comments and all these proverbs that we're learning about, their wisdom, it teaches us how to rule and reign in life. And that is where we want to be. And so that is what virtuous means. And so I don't have a whole lot tonight, other than there was a couple of other scriptures that I wanted to bring out. So we want to be that crown. We want to crown Jesus as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. You know, we want to drop our crown at his feet so that he's crowned with glory. And that is where that virtuous woman comes in. And so it tells us through all of that how to live for God in the right way. And it talks about the deeds of man in verse 14. And the deeds of a man's hand will return to him as harvest. And so it's the fruit of his words. It says a man will be satisfied with good from the fruit of his words, and the deeds of a man's hand will return to him as a harvest. So what comes out of your mouth will become a deed. You see, when it talked about over here in verse 5, it says the thoughts and purposes of the righteous are just, they're honest, they're reliable, but the counsels and schemes of the wicked are deceitful. You see, out of your mouth, that of your heart, the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks, and it will become a deed. It will become something that you do. Everything starts with a thought. It stimulates an emotion. It creates an attitude and will become a behavior in your life. And so once it's a deed, it comes out of you. And then the next thing you know, you're doing that thing and you're conformed to it. It's good or bad. And so we're going to reap what we sow. So whatever our words are, a man is satisfied with good from the fruit of his words, and the deeds of a man's hand will return to him as a harvest. And so we're going to reap what we sow. It goes on down and it talks about a prudent man ignores insult. You know, when you get insulted, just keep your mouth closed. I mean, it just deny it. Just walk away, turn around and walk away. That verses 13 through 15. That's what wisdom is, being teachable. And it tells us that. Just walk away. If you get offended, really and truly, that's on in verse 16 actually, and it's telling us how to speak wisely there. If you go to 13 through 15, it's telling us how wisdom means being teachable. So it talks about a fool in verse 15 is in love with his own opinion, but wisdom means being teachable. And so we can't love our own ways, our own thoughts. We have to allow the Lord, the mind of Christ, to be created in us and not our own opinions. And so it goes on then to tell you, if you take offense, don't do it. Don't even speak anything. Just be quiet. Use self-control. And it goes on, and then the whole time it is telling us it's learning to speak. It's learning to speak with wisdom. Remember, wisdom has a voice. And so there was a couple things I wanted to point out. Truthful lips will be established forever, but a lying tongue is only credited for a moment. So sometimes people will lie, but it's only going to take credit for a moment. Your actions will speak way louder than people's words. And so just hold your course. It says deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but counselors evil, but counselors of peace have joy. So anytime that somebody is counseling you with peace, if they're bringing peace, they're going to have joy in their life. And joy is just that calm delight. It's not an emotion. It's just that calmness in you. And so remember that. It goes on. I love this portion. In verse 23, it says, a shrewd man is reluctant to display his knowledge until the proper time, but the heart of the overconfident proclaims foolishness. You know, shrewdness is also a word for prudent. So you're prudent, you're shrewd. It says we're to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. In other words, sometimes you don't need to tell all you know. You hold your knowledge until it's the appropriate time, and then you speak it, and it brings the cutting that needs to happen for the plan of God to be manifested and happen right then at that moment. And so if you speak out of time and you reveal that knowledge, that revelation knowledge out of time, sometimes out of time will be out of time, and you will not get the same results. And so the Passion says, those who possess wisdom don't feel the need to impress others with what they know, but foolish ones make sure their ignorance is on display. In other words, sometimes you just got to be quiet. And then it goes on to say, if you want to rule and reign in life, because it says the hand of the diligent in the Amplified will rule, but the negligent and lazy will be put to forced labor. The Passion says, if you want to rule and reign in life, don't sit on your hands. Instead, work hard at doing what is right, for the slacker will end up working to make someone else succeed. So again, that's the ruling and reigning. That's what the Proverbs, all the Proverbs are all about. It ends up down in the very end of it, in verse 26, it says, the righteous man is a guide to his neighbor. So make sure that you're linked with people who are being good guides to you. So, and that they're wisdom, and that's who you are as a neighbor to your friend, to the person that's next to you, that you are being a good guide to them. And so it says the lazy man does not catch or roast his prey, but the precious possession of a wise man is diligence, because he recognizes opportunities and seizes them. And the way of righteousness is in life is its pathway, and there is no death. So it's basically saying right there, it says a passive person won't even complete a project, but a passionate person makes good use of his time, wealth, and energy. Abundant life is discovered by walking in righteousness and holding on to your anger leads to death. And so it's basically telling us there, I kind of really liked this because it talked about, I love this portion where it says a precious possession of a wise man is diligence. And so when you're diligent with things, when you're actually prudent and diligent and shrewd and you're moving forward and you're diligent, you just do it all the time. You just do it every day. You're diligent to press through, to bore actually it means to bore a hole, even in the ear, exactly what we were talking about yesterday. And so it's just a boring away, a cutting away. You are just not going to stop. You're just going to be diligent in all that you do, pressing through in the revelation, pressing through in the wisdom, pressing through and pressing in and not stopping. And so all of these Proverbs are just going one to the other, and they're just kind of building on one another. They're not just random things like I really thought some of them were, how I had that perception of that. They're really just kind of building. And so I'm kind of excited to see what tomorrow brings. But I want to bless you today. I thank him, and I just speak diligence over us, that it may be a precious possession to us, that we be wise, that we possess that diligence, and recognize the opportunities when they come, and we will seize them. So you be blessed, and I'll see you again tomorrow.